77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.
In the squadron, they called him Bullets, but we call him Greg Kelly. Greg Kelly is on the air
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. Here we are. I miss President Trump all the way over there in China, huh? You see him walking around with President Xi? Not much is really happening that we can see. You know, there's all kinds of, who knows what they're really talking about behind the scenes. The body language, people are feasting over the body language. I'm looking at them. They just look like two guys in suits walking around. I can't see much of anything. They're very unexpressive, kind of two poker faces in a way, poker faces. And they say, well, the way they shook hands, President Trump was the dominant one. I don't, it just a little bit. Now we're projecting. Now we're imagining things. There's a lot of annoyance out there. There was a report last night. Anna Paulina Luna. She's a member of Congress. All right. She's a sitting lawmaker. She is she's the chair of what committee is that? The Declassification Committee. And she went out there and kind of raised an alarm bell that the CIA basically took documents it shouldn't have taken from the Director of National Intelligence. It seemed very, very dramatic. And a lot of people, reacted to the dramatic news that the Central Intelligence Agency just went in there and took stuff. And people were construing, well, that must mean raid. Was it raided? And people were saying it was raided, and it seemed like a fair kind of takeaway from what she was putting out there. And now the whole story's kind of fallen apart. Well, it wasn't really. It was just some interns came over and picked up some boxes, and I don't know. It's a little bit of a mess, and I think that it reminds me that a lot of so-called lawmakers, the lawgivers. Doesn't that sound like it's from Star Trek? The lawgivers, the lawmakers. We make laws. They actually don't make laws. Lately, they've just been running around trying to get attention on social media. They used to run around trying to get attention on regular media. They weren't much better then, right? But now they can kind of just whip it out, say whatever the hell they want to get attention. And I know that I'm not going to name names, but I've seen certain people kind of get to Congress by posing in sexy bathing suits, right, with a military kind of vibe next to an attack dog. I've seen a lot of those pictures. I've seen pictures in Maxim magazine of attractive women, and they parlay that into Congress. Now, sometimes, look, that's okay, actually. You don't have to come out of, Oxford University. You don't have to be a judicial clerk. You don't have to be a senatorial chief of staff to make it to Congress. There should be a little bit of everybody. You could have a guy who runs a hardware store, an insurance business. You could have a truck driver there. You could have a bikini model. You can have all these things. But once you get there, I think you got to be serious about the work. And too many of them are just looking for clicks and likes and, influence. It is addictive. It's so addictive for them to see their name trending. And the drudgery of the work on Capitol Hill, a lot of them aren't interested in that. It's a sugar rush. Now, we've had some bad examples, really, in a way. Bad examples in that if you make a big enough splash in the House of Representatives, you can do anything. You can do anything. I mean, quite frankly, Richard Nixon is the first guy to ever do this. Richard Nixon was a, freshman congressman from California, but he latched on to something, anti-communism and looking for communists and Alger Hiss and the rest in the House Un-American Affairs Committee. And there was a role for that. There was something, we had to do that. But the courting of the media. So a freshman congressman without any experience, any legislative, anything, that place is all about seniority. Well, there are ways to kind of jump ahead of the line through media attention. And let's face it, people in the media, they're the biggest suckers around. They'll just chase this new shiny object. It's the silliest, most shallow conversation. And Richard Nixon, to his credit and also to our curse, mastered this pretty early on, got himself to the United States Senate almost instantaneously and to the vice presidency of the United States. Yes, he was a workaholic. Yes, he was brilliant. But he was also kind of a media whore in his own way. And now, like the cat's out of the bag, everybody can do the same thing. Why work? Why learn anything when you can just make noise on social media? And if you're attractive, if you're very attractive, and let's face it, looks maxing, it's not a cool thing to do. If you're a man and you're really trying to be a good-looking man, and, that's kind of silly, right? But guys are doing it, with the angular faces and the, I don't know, like these, what do you call it? The ultra marathoners. You got some of those guys in Congress, and they take their shirts off all the time and look at me. Hey, I would like to be in that kind of shape, but I don't have time. It's interesting that some members of Congress, some members of the president's cabinet have time to do all kinds of things. Go on vacation in the middle of the year for 2 weeks, right? Film a reality show demo reel. Because if you just do your job, well, you're a bit of a schmuck, right? I mean, you always have to be thinking of the next thing in Congress, right? Because those jobs don't last forever. And they don't pay, like, it's decent money, very decent money, but it's not life-changing. I don't have to worry about anything for the rest of my life money. And that's what they want. They want to be stupid rich. Have stupid money where you could just, I don't know. I like that barber in Los Angeles. Send him here immediately. I need a haircut. Okay, we're in New York, Yes, fly him here. That's stupid money. And they really want that. And in part because they hang around these ultra-rich people. But they see the ultra-rich people. They think they're smarter than the ultra-rich people. They think they're cooler than the ultra-rich people. They think they are basically more powerful than the ultra-rich people. So they think they should be ultra-rich. And it's just a great big mess. And sometimes you get the worst people with the worst motivations. And I think we're seeing some of that. We're seeing some of that at work. Now, having said all that, I didn't name any names, but I want to go back to Anna Paulina Luna. At the same time, look, she got herself to Congress, and she mastered some of the rules down there, these arcane procedures, and she was able to get her issues in front of the line. I forgot exactly what she did, but she basically opened up the manual, how to be a member of Congress. And there were all kinds of things in there that basically everybody forgot or nobody read about. And she was using them to the benefit of her district and her country. And I applaud that. That's beautiful, actually. And I think she is capable of hard work. The other thing, why I'm going to cut members slack a little bit of slack, is because when they get these scoops, well, they're the ones who have to do the work. And sometimes they do make mistakes. You see, the left, they have dominant media working for them and with them. The New York Times will do these major exposés and they'll work for months and then bam, and then they hold congressional hearings to look into the media report. It's different on our side. They got to do the work and then conservative media reports on their work, right? We really don't supplement it, or we amplify it, but we don't supplement it. Now you got some independent people out there doing their thing. So a lot of folks are saying, well, everybody fell for it. I have to cut her some slack at the same time because she's doing the work that should be done by dominant media. And yeah, even conservative media. But too often it's too easy to just lean back and say, or have your hand out, give us the information. I remember during the investigation into Joe Biden, there was all kind of bitching and moaning, like when the House Oversight Committee found out that $700,000 came from China to Joe Biden's personal account. Or I think it was Hunter Biden's personal account in Delaware, right? Money from China directly to Hunter Biden. And it was a shady source. It sounded like he had legitimate business in China, $700,000. I remember all the bitching and moaning that went down because, well, the House Oversight Committee, they presented this in the most ineffective way. They should have done it this way. They should have done it that way. Everybody thinks they're really good at messaging, right? Everybody nitpicks the message because you don't have to have any qualification. You don't have to have any expertise. You don't really have to. You can just look at the message and say, I could have done a better job myself. Yeah, I'm bored now. What do you know? That doesn't capture my attention. Give me something new. Give me something different, Anyway, there's something there. There's something there. There's something going on bad. The Central Intelligence Agency, I don't trust them at all. John Radcliffe, quite frankly, I think I need to put him on probation. But let's go to China right now. President Trump with President Xi. Cut 11, if you don't mind. Cut 11.
It was a fantastic day. And in particular, I want to thank President Xi, my friend, for this magnificent welcome. And it really was a magnificent welcome like none other. And for so graciously hosting us on this very historic state visit. We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier. And this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today, all good for the United States and for China. And it was a great honor to be with you.
How about that? Let's hear a little bit more. Cut 12.
Thank you again, President Xi, for this beautiful welcome. And tonight it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th. And we look forward to it. And I'd now like to raise a glass and propose a toast.
Can I hear the toast? I hope this is the toast. Cut 13.
The relationship between the American and Chinese people goes all the way back to America's founding. The first American consul to China, Samuel Shaw, arrived on the first American trading ship to reach these shores in 1784. The Chinese merchants had a name for the Americans. They called their visions the New People. 2.5 centuries later, that first connection has grown into one of the most consequential relationships in world history.
That's nice, too. It sounds like a little bit platitudinous, though, right? And that's okay. The stakes are very, very high. This is in public, so you don't want to do any harm, and that's okay. What's happening behind the scenes, I don't know. Somebody told me the last time President Trump was president, they negotiated a 100-page deal between America and China. And it was about all kinds of things. And China will not counterfeit anymore. They will not do this anymore. They won't abuse the Uyghurs in the Western China, right? The Uyghurs, it's a minority in China. And some people say there's like concentration camps and they're killing those people. And they said they're going to be nice to the Uyghurs and all kinds of things. Well, they blew off all of it. They blew off every little thing that they were going to do, and they're not following. So we can't trust them when we do a big deal like that. They'll just blow it off. It's not that they're like defiant. They're just, I don't know what they are, but apparently the message this time, they're not going to come out with some great big thing, some great big new thing that they sign, because it just doesn't work with them. You got to cajole them in some other way. And I think President Trump will figure out that way. Cut. This is the last cut I think we have from their little get-together so far. Cut 14, please. Cut 14.
From the beginning, our citizens have shared a deep sense of mutual respect. Founding Father Benjamin Franklin published the sayings of Confucius in his colonial newspaper. And today's sculpture, recognizing that ancient Chinese sage, is carved into the face of the United States Supreme Court very proudly.
Is it? What the hell does that say? All right. Again, these are niceties. These are the things you say in public, and all that's good. But you got to watch these guys. Hopefully they can wrap up this Iran war thing. No matter what happens in Iran, they'll portray it as a loss, a total defeat for President Trump. This is one of those moments where you cannot believe almost anything you say, you see, or hear. It's really quite a moment. 33 days of combat, they call it a quagmire. A report comes out from the government, leaked to the New York Times, which I presume is illegal, right? That says we did virtually no damage. During those 33 days of bombing, we did no damage. We did hardly any damage to Iran and their missile capacity. I can't believe that. I don't believe that. And the way the intelligence community works, they've got so many little hodgepodge things. They can release one little thing, and it will say this, and they're manipulating the media, and the media is going right along with it. It confuses everybody else. The easy thing to do is to tune it all out. And you should tune a lot of it out, actually, what they're saying. Primary sources, go with that. Go with not a little soundbite. We go with the entire event, right, to the extent you can. You'll be smarter, brighter, more informed than anybody in the fake news because they don't sit around listening to the whole thing. Now, I did put something together that I think is very, very amusing, and it shows the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump and how they approach China and how lucky we are right now that President Trump is in office and not Joe Biden. Because when Joe Biden goes to China, it's not about America. It's not about America's business. It's about the Biden business. That's why he takes Hunter, the crack addict. President Trump has been a hardliner on China basically his entire life, and I can prove it. And he's doing the right thing now. All right, there is the music to be continued. Is anybody obsessed with that Alex Murdaugh situation? I guess it's kind of fading away. Anti-Semitism isn't fading away. Chuck Schumer, your cowardice is not fading away. I may have to kick your ass if you don't get your act together. Electorally, I will kick your ass.
Greg Kelly.
Let's go, Brandon.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
Truth is ours.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
Hi, Diva. It's Rachel.
And Jordan. Yeah, hi. Quick question.
Why are you not spending your Venmo balance?
Yeah, we're concerned.
You can, buy stuff with it.
Ugh, you love buying stuff.
And earn cash back on eligible purchases.
You love purchasing eligible things.
So the money your friend sent you yesterday, that's today's ramen or rideshare or eye patches.
The skincare kind, not the pyro kind.
Spend with Venmo. Then you can earn cash back with Venmo Stash. Venmo Stash bundle terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms. ID verification required to use a Venmo balance.
Greg Kelly.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I'm feeling very healthy. I got to tell you, these GLPs, I've been trying to lose weight for years. I was only able to do it as an adult twice. Once in my 20s and once right around my 49th, 50th birthday. That was when I had a little bit extra time on my hands and I became a runner. I could run an hour a day. I can't do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore, but I don't want to be fat anymore. So I was trying other ways and, walks and trying to watch my diet and, you con yourself, you cheat yourself. You think you're cutting back, but you're not really cutting back. And the thing about it was March 1st, got on that scale. What was I? 226. April 10th, I was on that scale. Again, I was dieting. I was 228.8. I'm like, I'm screwed. What do I do? Give me the shot. Give me the shot. And they gave it to me right in the stomach, which is a little bit gross. I would rather it in the arm. I'd rather a pill. Just feels a little bit weird that they got to go right into my stomach. It doesn't hurt, by the way. And the product I am taking is Zepbound. Two guys recommended it. The first guy said, I'll think about it. 4 months go by, and then I had that epiphany, you know what I mean? And another guy said, you should do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And here I am. I'm down at least 12 pounds. I haven't been on the scale in a couple of days. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till Saturday morning. It gives me such a treat. I'm pretty sure it's going to be below 210 by the time I get on that thing. You know? And that feels great. It really does. I feel lighter. I'm more inclined. A lot of times I don't want to go there. What do I don't want to go there. What? I'm going to have to put on a big sweater. I don't know. I don't want to. I just don't want to go. I'd rather stay home and be comfortable. I don't want to put on pants. Pants are tight. I'd rather wear sweatpants. I can't wear sweat. I only wanted to go places where you could wear sweatpants. And that's not everywhere. You can't wear sweatpants anywhere. Anyway, that's my problem. That's an MP, not a YP, although you might be able to benefit from the GLP, and you might be able to benefit from getting into that beautiful book called the Bible. All right? The Bible. Now, I still got all kinds of rough edges, and sometimes I'm not the greatest ambassador, but I'm much better than I used to be. Quite frankly, I'd be dead. I'd be dead if I didn't start studying the Word of God. I started in 2015, 2016, right around there. And it was a radical awakening. It was a radical awakening that really all came together years later, 2019. Talk about that. I mean, it was like laugh out loud funny. God is right next to me. He's right there now. How you doing? He knows everything. He knows everything, and he still loves each and every one of us. That's pretty cool, no matter what the hell it is you did. And believe me, I've done some things that I'm not proud about, and so did you. He knows. He doesn't care. I mean, he cares, but he's ready to forgive all of that and help you out. He wants to. He wants to do great things for you. If he could save a wretch like me, you know how the little song goes, he can do it for you. All right, Amazing Grace. This is Joe Biden versus President Trump on the issue of China. Over the years, this is every sentence you're going to hear from both men happens in the same year, like in 2010, then 2013, then 2008, all the way up to basically yesterday. All right, this is how they sound. Cut one, if you don't mind. Cut one.
I have many people from China that I do business with. They laugh at us. They feel we're fools. They're getting away with absolute murder.
China's a great nation, and we should hope for the continued expansion.
I don't want to lose $300 billion a year to China when we can't afford to build schools for our children, when we can't afford to build highways, when we can't afford to build railways, when we can't afford to build bridges. I want money to be invested in jobs and in this country. I don't want to rebuild China.
A rising China is a positive development, not only for China, but for America and the world writ large.
It was China's fault. And China's going to pay a big price, what they've done to this country. China's going to pay a big price, what they've done to the world. This was China's fault. And just remember that.
554,064 American dead from COVID-19. A lot of families want to know how this happened, how it got here. Have you had a chance to speak to any of your international partners, any of President Xi, who I know you go way back with? Have you had a chance to ask him if these reports are true that China maybe misled the world at the beginning?
No, I have not had that conversation with President Xi. Thank you.
I thought you guys were best friends. It's remarkable, isn't it? One person is advocating for America, and the other one seems to be advocating for business interests. That's Joe Biden. Why would he be that sweet to China? What does he care? Oh, there's money involved. Oh, Hunter and Bohai Investments. And the biggest billionaire in all of China. Those guys were in business together. It's crazy. Now, you have to remember this. I know. Oh, what about Jared Kushner? Oh, what about the Qataris? You see, Jared Kushner was a multi-millionaire before he ever met Donald Trump. He was an international businessman. He bought a building, 666 6th Avenue, Avenue of the Americas, a very famous building. They used to have a club up there called Top of the Sixes. And now it's the Havana Room or the Havana Bar where they go to smoke cigars. I love that spot. I hate cigars. I try to smoke cigars. I don't know what I'm doing. Do we puff? Do we what? What the hell is the point? This doesn't taste good. It makes your clothes totally stink. I just don't understand the cigar thing. Anyway, he bought a building for over $1 billion, Jared Kushner, before he ever met President Trump. This is a guy who does big deals. He has a skill set. Hunter and Biden, Joe, they have no skills. None. Other than what? Handshake, raising money, and getting things done for you inside the government that they shouldn't be getting done for you. All right, that's the big difference. Here's Joe Biden yelling and screaming about how much time he spent with President Xi, who's the president of China right now. Let me ask you something. Does this impress you? Because I would always assume that a leader of this country would be hanging around with the leader of other countries. He doesn't have to say this, but he does. Why? Cut 2.
I've spent more time with Xi Jinping, at least before we got out, than any world leader has. I've traveled 17,000 miles with him, the president of China. I probably spent more time with Xi Jinping, I'm told, than any world leader has, because I had 24, 25 hours of private meetings with him when I was vice president, traveled 17,000 miles with him, and know him pretty well. I've spent more time with President Xi of China than any world leader has, for 24 hours of private meetings with him. I've spoken and spent more time with Xi Jinping than any other world leader has. I've had hours and hours and hours of meetings and personal conversations with Xi Jinping. I spent more time with him, I believe, than any other world leader has.
Well, that's great. Why would he say such a thing? What's that all about? What does that mean? What's going on there? It's weird. Very weird. Nobody cares. But who does? People who want to do business in China, and also the Chinese. The Chinese. He is advertising, actually, to Chinese businessman that I am very close to President Xi. You should work with me. There's a Chinese word for it. It's called Wulun. And proximity to power and family, like that's a whole magical thing over there. It's more so than it is here. We all love family. Family is important, but family coupled with relationships, business relationships with other families, and it all comes into a great big ball that I don't totally understand, but they have a word for it called Wulun. And Miranda Devine wrote about this in her amazing book, Laptop from Hell, a whole story about the Hunter Biden situation. All right, so do we want to find out what the hell Vice President Vance is doing right now in Maine? I do. He's talking about, he's doing a couple of things up there. He's going to work for Governor LePage, who hopefully will be the next congressman. The governor's getting a demotion. And he's also talking about fraud. A demotion in the best way. He could help us keep the Congress. Go ahead.
Isn't that a shame? At least half of the hands shot up. And the reason why we've allowed identity theft to fester in this country is because the government wasn't going after fraud. And ladies and gentlemen, that changed the moment Donald J. Trump became the president of the United States. Now, I want to talk about all that, but I want to give a few notes of shout out here because we have a lot of great local officials and a lot of great future officials that are here today. And first, we have your great former Governor Paul LePage. Paul, where are you, man? There he is. Now, Paul is a great guy, a guy who loves the state of Maine. And we're going to talk a little bit about how he was the biggest advocate for your tax dollars and the biggest threat to fraudsters that ever existed in the state of Maine. And here's the problem is fraud has festered in Maine because this guy is no longer the governor of Maine. So we're going to send him to Washington and fight fraud at the federal level. Now, my friend and former Senate colleague Susan Collins was not able to be here. Susan is back in D.C. She doesn't like to miss votes. And here's the thing I'll say about Susan Collins is sometimes I get frustrated with Susan Collins. I almost wish that she was more partisan. But the thing I love about Susan is she is independent because Maine is an independent state. And frankly, if she was as partisan as I sometimes wish that she was, she would not be a good fit for the people of Maine. So let's give a shout out to Susan Collins, who's doing a great job. We have got Senate GOP leader Trey Stewart. Where is Trey at? Raise your hand, Trey. Good to see you, man. A young guy, a good-looking guy, younger and better looking than I am. So I don't like you, Trey. I don't like you. But you're doing a good job. We got House GOP leader Billy Bob Fockingham. Where's Billy Bob? We've got ranking member Chad Perkins. Where's Chad Perkins at? Chad, thank you, man. And we've got the county sheriff, Troy Morton. Where is the county sheriff at? Troy, thank you. Thank you for your service and for all that you and your law enforcement folks are doing for our great country. We've also got some reporters from the Maine Wire, people who have been fighting. People who have been fighting fraud, so let's give a round of applause to John Featherson and Steve Robinson. See you guys.
Can I just for a second, you know what's interesting? This is, what you're listening to is so important. This local stuff, this local, and the Trump team, Trump himself, Vance, his people, his staff, they nail it every single time. Those shout outs. You know, it's so easy to screw that up. It's so easy to overlook somebody. It's so easy to botch a name. They never, ever do that. And it's because they got such a great staff. Those people, the underlings, right? And sometimes they're just 28 years old. They got to scramble and everything comes off flawlessly. It is a beautiful thing. You know, if you call Governor LePage, Governor Lepage, well, actually, that's okay. French people say Lepage and Americans say LePage, but believe it or not, there's a little sliver of a county up in Maine where they only speak French. It's true. And there he's called Lepage. In the rest of the state, he's called LePage. And his first language, LePage, was French, even though he grew up in America. He was born in America. All right, let's go back to Vance. He's getting to the good stuff about the fraud.
Go and claim services that aren't even necessary. So then the victim is the doctor that gets stolen from, it's the taxpayer that gets stolen from, but it's also the innocent patient who should be able to know that when their doctor prescribes something, it's meant for them and it's good for them. I'm talking about the construction worker who can't buy a cell phone because when an illegal alien goes and steals their identity and applies for SNAP benefits, now all of a sudden they're tagged in the banking system, their credit score is ruined. Not because they did a single thing wrong, but because somebody stole their identity. Fraud is exactly what happens when you've got a government that is not fighting for the American people, but is fighting for fraudsters and illegal aliens. And it had to stop. And under the Trump administration, we are fighting it every single day. And again, it is every single day I learn of something new. I learn about people who say that they're claiming for hospice services, but in fact, they're not providing any services and they're making hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in the process. Talk about something that we've seen in Minneapolis, but also in Maine. We have seen people go out there and say that they're providing services to autistic children when in reality, they maybe don't have any children at all, or they certainly don't have autistic children. So they get paid millions and millions of your dollars to provide services that they're not actually providing. And oh, by the way, what happened to the autistic children and their families who actually need those services and need a competent government to ensure that they're doing the right thing? My friends, this has gone on for far too long. You have been fleeced by your own government for far too long, and we are stopping it every single day. Now, let me tell you about a guy, though, who did not stand for fraud. He did not stand for fraud when he was in the state government, and he will not stand for fraud in the United States House of Representatives representing you. And that's Paul LePage.
Yeah, Paul LePage. I talked to this guy the other night, and he's very, very cool. Ex-governor. Now he's running for the House of Representatives. And look, he could do it. He's running against... he's going to do fine. Somehow a Democrat squirmed into that seat. Squirmed squirmed. 2 districts up there. One is reliably red, but it goes blue sometimes. And the other one is bright blue, the one down by Portland. So, look, the midterms, don't believe the hype, okay? We could actually keep the midterms, and that would shock the world. Keep the House in the hands of MAGA for the midterms. The Senate, I think we got that almost licked, almost assured. All right, give me a moment. Be right back. Oh, who's that pretty boy on TV right now? Schlossberg. John F. Kennedy's grandson thinks he could be a congressman. He happens to be the dopiest guy I've ever seen. And you can't suddenly just put on a tie and now you're serious. He is an intellectual layabout in putting the most bizarre weirdo videos on Instagram for years. That's all he's done. He's never had a job. And now you want to be my congressman, pal? Ain't happening. I got to do whatever I can to stop that guy, too. Now, it's going to be one of those low-life Democrats, though. It's almost a done deal. All right, give me a second. I'll be right back.
Greg Kelly
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
If anybody care about Alex Murdaugh, who the hell's Alex Murdaugh? That weird redheaded guy in South Carolina, the lawyer who was convicted of killing his wife and son in a case that made no sense to me. I don't think he did it. I think it's wrong. I think he got screwed. I think he's a maniac. He's a pill popper, all kinds of crazy problems. That doesn't make him a murderer. And the big thing is the big piece of evidence that they say incriminates, that they say convicts. I think it actually shows that he's innocent. There's something wrong about that whole damn case. I can get into, forget that for a second. How's my friend Kash Patel doing? He's taking a beating in the fake news and every time he goes to Capitol Hill. And there is this general fake news consensus that somehow he's not up to the job, that somehow he does not have the appropriate credentials for that job. And that's totally and completely wrong. Here's CNN. This is the typical fake news, casual flip, drive-by, as Rush used to say, media. Always wrong, always lazy. Cut 8.
Patel has no real experience with the FBI. He's not a former agent. That's generally a role that goes to a former agent.
That's generally a role that goes to a former agent. Really? Really? How many FBI directors have there been, dummy? 8. Only 8. J. Edgar Hoover wasn't even an FBI agent. J. Edgar Hoover was not an FBI agent. William Webster was not an FBI agent. Anybody remember him? No, but he was the director. He actually died last year at the age of 101. Amazing. When you get to be that old, you start outliving your children. What a strange sensation that might be. So, William Webster, not an agent. He was appointed, I think, by Jimmy Carter. Who came after him? A guy named William Sessions, not an agent. You know what they were? William Webster was a judge and a federal prosecutor, okay? William Sessions was a judge and a federal prosecutor. The guy who came after that was Louis Freeh, a native of New Jersey, strangely close to the Bidens. He was a former federal prosecutor, a former judge, and yes, a former FBI agent for about 20 minutes. Actually, maybe 2 or 3 years, he was an FBI agent. Who came after him? Robert Mueller, former federal prosecutor. That's it. Wasn't an FBI agent. Comey, former federal prosecutor, wasn't an FBI agent. And that brings us to Kash Patel. Guess what? Kash Patel, former federal prosecutor. Also, former federal defense attorney. That even makes him more qualified. Defense, that's part of the criminal justice system, right? The defense part is part of the whole thing, right? But in front of the justice system, one doesn't have an advantage over the other, right? Only proven guilty. Defense, that's fantastic. He's also a former senior national security intelligence official at the highest positions in government. Chief of Staff to Devin Nunes when he was the House Intelligence Committee chair. Department of Defense Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense. These are critical key jobs, and he held them. And he's right up there with every other guy who ran that place. I'm trying to think who else. There's only the other guys. I'm like, J. Edgar Hoover was not an agent. Clyde Tolson, who they say was his boyfriend, he came after J. Edgar. He was the director for about 20 minutes. I believe he was an agent. Okay. Oh, L. Patrick Gray. I'm surprised I forgot about this one. He was a lawyer. He may have been a federal prosecutor. He had never been an FBI agent. I'm pretty sure about that. He was a submarine commander. You don't have to be an FBI agent. In fact, here's the dirty little secret. They don't want former FBI agents. The FBI does not want former FBI agents running the FBI. Because guess what? If you're a former agent and you know the Bureau, you'll know how to run the FBI. They don't want that. They don't want the director directing. They don't want the director running the FBI. They want to run the director of the FBI. You get it? They're the boss. If you get a boss who knows too much, who's too good, you got to obey the orders. You can't play diplomatic fake news games on them. It's harder to leak on them. That's why my dad was one of the most effective police commissioners, the most effective police commissioner ever, right? He knew everything about that department. You couldn't fool him. You couldn't get away with anything. And let's face it, look, it's a great organization. The men and women of the NYPD, fantastic, right? Great, awesome, all this great technical know-how, law enforcement experience, but it's also a bureaucracy. And you also have an element there, you know what I mean, who really, it's a kind of a job, and you have to discipline people sometimes, and you have to suspend people sometimes. And, if a person has walked in your shoes, it's harder to fool them. It's very easy to fool somebody from the outside who's never walked a beat. And that brings us again to Jessica Tisch, right? You think she's running the NYPD? She has no clue. Zero. It's a prestigious job. She likes the prestige. She likes going to various banquets and galas. And ladies and gentlemen, introducing the police commissioner of the city of New York, Jessica Tisch. Isn't that nice, right? And maybe she'll get a little trophy or a plaque, right? Pictures taken, video taken, right? She'll make a speech claiming credit for things that she's not responsible for. She'll make a speech where she boasts about things that aren't true. She'll make a speech where she skirts around the anti-Semitic boss she has. She'll make a speech where she won't acknowledge the anti-Semitism that we saw in the streets of Brooklyn the other day. And what did they send? How did they police that event? You know what they sent? Community officers, legal aid officers, legal. You see, NYPD legal. They sent a bunch of lawyers there. You got to send cops, bats and hats, riot gear. You don't let the mob, you don't let the terrorist supporters take over the streets of Midwood, Brooklyn. And if I run, and I am motivated to do so, and I don't really want to do it, but I am so fired up about this. If no one else is stepping up at this critical time, I'm not saying stepping up to run, but this is so obvious. Anti-Semitism is flourishing in the heart of Brooklyn, New York. And the police aren't doing a damn thing. Our political leaders aren't doing a damn thing. Most of them actually like it and agree with the terrorist sympathizers.
Thanks for listening to The Greg Kelly Show. You can hear The Greg Kelly Show weekdays at 12:15 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?